2023 predictions time, let's get straight into it. Starting with a few categories I want to outline before then we go through the entire 20 drivers and the entire 10 teams. And let me know in the comments your hottest prediction. What is your most out there prediction? Something you think is going to happen that no one else seems to be saying. Starting with most improved, I'm going with Zhou Guanyu. I think last season was good. I think context around when the Alfa Romeo had performance and when it didn't meant that it was difficult for him because he started the season in a strong car, ended the season in a weaker one, and obviously as a rookie his performances are going to improve over the course of the year, or at least his understanding of the package underneath him. I'm expecting big things from Zhou, and when you look through the junior formulas of the calibre of drivers he's gone toe-to-toe with, even though the results haven't necessarily looked great, you shouldn't be that surprised. Most improved team is a pretty easy one, having seen testing. I'm going for Aston Martin. Now, do I think they're going to reach the heights that a lot of people are saying, you know, P2, clear of Ferrari, Mercedes? We'll see in my main predictions, but in terms of an improvement relative to last, I mean, look, they were down there with Williams at the start of last year, and they have turned that ship around. Second half of the year was decent last year, you can't forget about that, but they were still firmly behind McLaren and Alpine. For them to now jump up and quite conceivably be clear of both of those teams and maybe even knocking on the door of the top three is incredible. Dan Fallows, this man seems to be a bit of a genius. What about closest teammates? Closest pairing, most toe-to-toe. There's a lot of potential driver pairings for this one, but actually I'm going to say Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc. Carlos started the season slow last year, but I think as he got used to the car, he got into it a bit more. I think Charles took to the car more instinctively. Carlos took a bit more time, but going into their second season in this new Ferrari car, which seems to be an evolution on last year, so it's not radically different. I do think they're going to give Fred Vasseur a bit of a headache because in terms of a number one, look, you've got to look at the track record and think Charles is going to take that position, and Fred will make that call. He will make that decision, unlike Binotto. But I don't think Carlos is going to make that an easy decision because Fred rates both of them. He tried to sign Carlos multiple times. He rates Carlos Sainz. Just because he's close with Charles doesn't mean his love of Sainz is the contrary. And then driver of the year. Actually, we're going to get back to that one because that will definitely spoil my driver predictions. The whole grid is going to be closer in 2023 than it was in 2022. I've got no doubt about that, whether it's at the front, in the middle, at the back. So this makes predictions even more difficult. Someone's got to be last, and I'm afraid I'm going with Nick De Vries. I think that AlphaTauri car, I don't have a huge amount of faith that it's going to be fighting in the midfield. Combined with a driver who is a rookie into F1. Yes, he's stacked with experience. Yes, he's won multiple championships in open wheel cars, but F1 is a different breed. This isn't so much against Nick, it's just more I don't think that package is going to be as competitive, and I think we're going to see other cars take a bigger step up relative to AlphaTauri, my opinion. P19, Logan Sargent, I do think he's going to take well to F1 this year. I'm confident of that. Again, look at his track record. The results don't tell the full story. And I think Williams are looking good. They've put a lot of mileage in. They've got, 2 seasons now of finishing last, which means the full ATR time. Yes, Vowles is just coming. Yes, they don't have a technical chief yet either, but I'm confident from what I've seen, the murmurings from the paddock, particularly from Sam Collins, and Sam Collins, basically, if he says something, it's probably true because that man's a genius. So I'm sticking Logan P19. P18, Yuki Tsunoda. I do think he'll beat Nick De Vries this year in a car that's going to be towards the back because, again, for the top 10 cars to get points, there's a bottom 10 cars that don't. Points don't really tell a lot of the story at the back of the field because you can luck into points, and getting points is so difficult. If you've got an average finishing position, that's what you really need to be looking at cars towards the back. And I think the AlphaTauri will be towards the back, and I think Yuki will step up, but will it be enough to overcome the hardware difficulties? I don't think so. P17, Alex Albon, Williams and AlphaTauri drivers are taking up my bottom 4, and they were the bottom 2 teams last season. You could say that's boring, but that's what I think is going to happen. We've seen testing. Williams has looked good, but I just don't think they're going to be able to overcome, especially with the instability at the team as well in terms of management. I'd love to be more confident in Williams, I really would, but I just don't think we're quite there yet. But again, every team's going to be fighting for points every weekend this year. It almost was the case last year with Alex in that Williams. He was getting a lot of P11s, 12s, 13s, you know, when you're on the cusp, and it just takes a couple of DNFs up the front for you to, you know, inherit some points. P16, Nico Hulkenberg. Look, I do think Nico's going to do a good job. I really do. And again, it's just going to be super tight. Someone's got to go here. And I do think Kevin Magnussen is going to do the better job head to head. He's more established at that team. He's more fresh in F1. But Nico Hülkenberg, you know full well, he's proved it time and time again that he can jump into a car at late notice and deliver. Imagine what he can do when it's not so late notice, which is the situation we're in now. So I'm up to be proven wrong on this one, but I'm going to put Nico Hülkenberg P16. Because then P15, Oscar Piastri. McLaren. Look. McLaren have had a bit of a shocker at testing, haven't they? And everyone's kind of not sure where to rate them. It's hard to put McLaren too low because of the good momentum they've had over seasons. And is this just testing issues? And will that car, improve significantly after the first kind of 5-6 races? Maybe. They had a really slow start to last year as well. But it doesn't sound good. No one's entitled success in the sport. No one's entitled midfield success in this sport. And if they really have dropped the clanger that it sounds like they have, then it's not looking good, Brev. Oscar, obviously new to the team, new to F1 hardware, with a difficult car underneath him as well. I'm putting him 15th, which means Kevin Magnussen sits P14. So we've got Haas and McLaren occupying very similar positions. I'm confident K-Mag will do a good job. Am I really confident in that Haas? Again, there were good murmurings from Haas at testing, but do I have ultimate faith in Haas as a project relative to these other teams when they're split out between, the UK, the US and their Italian facilities? A lot of it is riding on how good Ferrari are and the gains that Ferrari may or may not have made, because power unit wise, Ferrari's looking pretty strong. Haas are going down that same side pod philosophy. They take everything they can from Ferrari, which again, I think a team like that, you would be naive not to do that, which I think is where AlphaTauri come up a bit short. But again, it's all going to be close. I think they're going to be fighting for points most weekends, and it's difficult to balance it out over the course of a 23 race season. You don't know how cars are going to develop, but we can only go from what we've seen in testing, and it's looking good, but I'm not getting too much head loss. So yeah, Lando Norris P13. Mate, I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? I feel for Lando at the minute. A situation where he knows what he can do. He's proven what he can do. He wants McLaren. Clearly, he's invested and cares about that team, and they're the team that brought him into Formula One, and he wants to get to the top with McLaren. But is that naive? Ultimately, if there is an opportunity to go to a Mercedes to replace Hamilton, is there an opportunity to go to Red Bull to replace a Checo? Is there an opportunity to go to any other big team to get that opportunity to fight at the front that McLaren don't seem to be able to give him? Because McLaren should be carrying good momentum into this season, yet Aston Martin have come out of nowhere and done what McLaren really should have done, let's be honest. And then Alpine, they're an actual manufacturer. They've got that Renault backing, they've got their own power unit, they've got that control, and it just makes you think, are McLaren best placed to actually achieve top results in this sport? Maybe getting into bed with Honda from 2026 and Honda not having their own team and almost turning that into a works Honda McLaren team might actually be the best play. I don't know. Because as a customer team, it seems difficult. We know the wind tunnel's coming. We know all these facilities are being improved, but will it be too little too late? I think it's going to be a frustrating season for Lando. I mean, apparently he punched the pit wall, which I'm sure he didn't appreciate Will Buxton grassing him up, is what it is, I suppose. And he's entitled to be frustrated because it's a frustrating situation. P12, I have gone Valtteri Bottas. I haven't put his teammate in P12. Put Joe P11. So controversial, I know. I know a lot of Bottas fans think I hate him. Obviously not. He's clearly a lovely bloke. Great mullet. Good vibes only. For sure, in terms of the driver I see on track, I see a driver who is quick one lap, but just doesn't have top tier racecraft. And I think in the midfield, that really catches you out when you don't have that car advantage. They had a great car at the start of the year. He was able to capitalise. When that car advantage seemed to lessen, he wasn't able to get up there in the points. They finished behind Williams, if you only count the second half of the season last year. Valtteri wasn't able to pick up points. Neither was Joe, but Joe's a rookie. And this is why I've been really impressed with Joe's growth and development. Maybe it is recency bias, but, for Valtteri to come into that team and the team to struggle so much second half of the season, how much of that is Valtteri not doing enough to support the team, and how much is that just the car not being good enough? It's impossible to say for sure. We're not at the team. But I think Joe's momentum is strong, and I could see him outscoring Valtteri this year. I really could. I honestly, the points again last year do not tell the full story. P10, I'm going with Lance Stroll. Now, This is in part because I am anticipating he is going to miss at least the first race of the season, maybe the first couple with Felipe Drogovic deputising, if that is the case, which is obviously going to hold him back somewhat. But also, look, yes, do I think Lance Stroll is the greatest wheel-to-wheel racer? No. Do I think he's improved over the course of his career? Sure, but he's had what? This is his 7th, 8th year, whatever it is, in Formula 1 now. So he should be improving. He should be getting better. The Aston Martin clearly is an exciting package, and it looks like it's going to be able to deliver bits. But do I think it's going to be able to deliver bits in the hands of Lance Stroll? I'm not convinced. I don't think his ultimate pace is really the issue. It's just the decision making at times that just really is really frustrating, because there's clearly a good driver there. He just needs to, it's about having the full package. You can't just have one or two things. Like, he's great in the starts, he's great in the wet as well, but he hasn't quite got everything ticked off. And hopefully in time it will come, because Lance isn't going anywhere, let's be honest. P9, I've put Pierre Gasly. Yes, so of the Alpine teammates, I'll put Pierre P9 and I'll put Esteban P8. So they're together. They're ahead of the McLarens. They're ahead of the Alfa Romeos. They're ahead of one of the Aston Martins. Look, Alpine didn't give much away in testing, but I do think that car package is going to be stronger than we're maybe giving it credit for. I do think they're holding a bit in reserve. They didn't even put the soft tyre on in testing. So, clearly they're going for long run pace. They're going for a different approach. They're not interested in getting those high profile times, which is arguably a good strategy, because it kind of keeps the attention off, it keeps the expectation low. And expectation is the thing that really kills a team, because when you don't meet that expectation, then everything's going wrong. This is kind of where McLaren have set, rightly so, have set higher expectations, given they finished, third in 2020, fourth in 2021. They were right up there. But ultimately, you win points during races, not in qualifying. So yeah, look, I'm confident of Alpine, and Esteban should beat Pierre. I think he will beat Pierre. It's Pierre's first season at that team. Esteban is firmly settled there. Do I think it's going to come to blows on track? I mean, given Esteban's track record, particularly with teammates, I am a bit concerned, but I like to think this opportunity, they won't let their egos get in the way, because I've got no time for it, man. Especially if you're in a position like Alpine, right, where all this investment, all these thousands of people working in the team, and you can't park your ego enough to just not be a knobhead with your teammate. I ain't got time for it. It does my nutting. It really annoys me. Also, Pierre came off the back of a not great season last year, and in terms of calibre of teammates, has he really gone against tough teammates like Esteban has? No. I mean, I guess apart from Verstappen, but he did get absolutely battered there, as do most people. P7, I'm going with Fernando Alonso. I've not put an Aston Martin driver in the top 6, but I do think Fernando is going to be the one to extract the performance from that car. It's interesting that they say that 95% of that Aston Martin is different to last year. And a driver like Fernando that can jump in and drive anything, that car must feel different, somewhat more different to last year, which again, I worry, how is Stroll going to adapt to that car? Fernando is arguably the most adaptable driver of this modern era. Everything he drives at the ceiling. Slow, fast, doesn't matter. But do I think it's going to be enough over the course of the season to overcome even if at the start of the year they're quicker than Mercedes and maybe even Ferrari, over the course of the whole year, are they going to be able to keep up that momentum to displace those two massive names with all this resource historically? I don't think so, but again, this is what Lawrence wants. He wants this team fighting at the front. This is what Fernando signed up for, and it's looking very promising so far. So I really want to be proven wrong, because to see Fernando Alonso consistently scrapping for podiums this year would be phenomenal. I'd love that. I would so love that. P6, I am putting George Russell, Mercedes, and I'm putting Lewis P5. So yeah, it's I'm not convinced that Mercedes are going to make enough of a gain. Look, at the end of last year, second half of last season, they were quicker than Ferrari. I feel like Ferrari kind of threw the towel in a little bit. Second half of last year, maybe turned the engines down a bit. I think they've sorted that now. They've got that, straight line speed. I think Mercedes, they're still kind of flip-flopping a bit about, car concept. Apparently, they're not actually going to change up. I saw an interview with one of their technical guys that Ted Kravitz was doing. They're not going to bring a vastly different philosophy. It's not like they'll bring a Red Bull side pod potentially halfway through the season, but they will bring something that is visibly different, but still a development on their current philosophy. So they are still going down that philosophy, and maybe this will pay off. That's the thing. They're banking on it being a long-term return, but more short-term pain. And I put the two Mercedes drivers in P5, P6 because, I think that Lewis was the stronger driver over I know that's controversial because George scored more points, but I think there's more to it than that. I think Lewis had to sacrifice more last year for the development of the car, in my opinion. And I think that, George had these silly little mistakes in there as well. Do I think he'll iron them out somewhat? Yes, I think these two will be very close. These were certainly up there for my closest teammate pairing for sure. They were really close last year on pace and fairly close on points, and they're going to be the same this year. But I think Lewis will just about eke it out. So then P4, I'm putting Checo. So the Red Bull does look solid, does look balanced, does look good. Do I think Checo's going to be close enough to Max to then dislodge the Ferraris? No. I would love to, don't get me wrong. Of the top 6 drivers, the driver I'd love to see a World Championship most is for Checo, for sure. The vibes would be absolutely immaculate. His story, his rise from coming over to Europe, from Mexico as such a young kid, that's such a difficult transition to make, to then consistently perform, to get into F1, to have the setback at McLaren, to then almost lose his drive completely, to save Racing Point / Force India, and then to get the Red Bull opportunity and do his bit to help out Max in 2021 as well. I think Checo, I would love to see him win a world title. I haven't seen enough to suggest that's going to be a thing though. He's still far too far away from Max. Like, that qualifying delta needs to close. He needs to find a way to make it close. Max is incredible, don't get me wrong, but so Sergio, and he needs to start showing it. 2 wins when your teammate got 15 last year, and both of those wins, you can argue there's a big degree of fortuity in them as well. Sure, he was on pace to win in Saudi. That was definitely a missed opportunity. That was probably his most impressive drive actually last year. But yeah, Checo needs to step up. P4, I don't think he'll be quicker than the Ferraris. So here's my top 3. Carlos Sainz, P3. And I do think Charles will outperform him this year. I do think it will be close. That's why I put him in my closest teammate pairing. I do think he's going to make it difficult for Fred to choose between the two. Carlos being up there and closer to Charles than Checo is probably going to be to Max will help Ferrari out in the long term. I think Charles has the highest ceiling for sure, but I think Carlos can more than hold his own at that team. And I think Fred will be able to manage that. I think Fred is very no BS. He'll do what needs to be done. And I think because he doesn't faff about and try and please everyone, and he knows what he wants and he goes for it, I feel like the drivers will probably respond to that better than a bit more of a, it felt like Binotto didn't want to make a decision, didn't want to make a difficult decision. I think he probably lost a bit of respect for that as well amongst the drivers anyway. That's just my opinion. So then P2, I'm putting Charles Leclerc. Charles Leclerc P2. He's not going to win the title again, but he will come closer than last year. I think that car will be competitively more similar to Red Bull over the course of the entire season. I still think, pole positions, he might win out on pole positions, but do I think he'll win the title? No, I think that's going to go to P1, which is Max Verstappen, because it's hard to look past like what is Max's weakness at the moment. You look at that car and it looks just, they've evolved on that philosophy, taken what they've already got and they've improved on it. But I just think that Max he's just gonna do it again. Because why wouldn't I? Like, what has he shown to the contrary? Like, he just looks super happy and super confident in testing. I think 3 world titles it's going to happen. Do I think it's going to be as convincing as it was last year? No, because I think the rest of the competitive field, I think everyone is going to be closer than last year. I've got belief that accordion effect is going to start to take aim this year, not just between Red Bull and Ferrari, but between Red Bull and whoever's the last team on the grid. So then Constructors, a lot of this you'll be able to work out based on my drivers, but not all of it. P10, I am though putting AlphaTauri. P9 Williams, no surprises there. Those drivers were all in the bottom 4, so it was always going to be out of them two. I do think Williams will jump ahead of AlphaTauri ever so slightly. It's going to be marginal though. It always is at the bottom because you're just picking up scraps in terms of points anyway. P8, I'm putting Haas. I do think they will improve relative, but I still think they'll finish P8. I just don't have ultimate faith in that team moving forward. But then P7's McLaren, which is it's going to be tough for a lot of people to take. And some people put McLaren lower than P7. I still think over the course of the year, I think they'll improve their car. I've got faith that this team will improve as things go on. But the start of the year is going to be difficult to swallow for McLaren fans. That seems pretty clear from testing, because they're the only team really that struggled. Every other team seemed to be quite positive, apart from McLaren. P6 Alfa Romeo, no big surprise there. I think they'll kind of consolidate on what they did last year, and I think they'll eke out that performance more consistently over the course of the year, which means P5 is Aston Martin. I'm going to say Aston Martin remain behind Alpine. I think people are writing off Alpine because they didn't show a lot in testing, but they seemed very happy, and that speaks volumes. I think, again, Ocon Gasly is a very strong driver pairing. I won't hear otherwise. They're both very, very good F1 drivers. They've both won races for a reason. They saw the opportunities and they took them, which is easier said than done. You know, Stroll's going to miss the first race, probably at least the first race. The Felipe's going to jump in. It's going to be difficult for him to acclimatise and adjust. So you're going to probably miss out on a few points. At the start of the year, I think Fernando is going to deliver everything that car has to offer, but I just think Lance is ultimately going to be the weak link in that team. So then P3 is Mercedes. Obviously, no surprise there. They're 5th and 6th in the Drivers' Championship. But then P2, I'm putting Red Bull, Ferrari to win Constructors. I have to look at the numbers that are being presented to me. This is nothing personal, but people go, oh, you're so harsh on Checo. I'm sorry, look at the average qualifying delta. Look at the average race pace gap. Like, that gap is too big. When you have two teammates, yes, it can be an issue when you've got two teammates close together at the front, but also it can help because it, from a constructor's point of view anyway, it takes points off of the other team, but it also means strategically you can play around a bit. You can use those two cars more often than not when it's versus one, and that gives you more options. And I think over the course of the entire season, I think, again, Carlos and Charles will be very close, and they will be pretty close to Max. And I just don't think Checo's going to be a mile off, don't get me wrong. I just don't think he's going to be able to consistently enough get on the podium, I guess. I think it's going to be them three on the podium most of the time. I hope Checo proves me wrong, because again, what you want to see is not necessarily what you believe you will see. I want to see Checo fighting at the front, and I want to see him win a world title. I would love that, but honestly, can I hand on heart say I believe actually that is going to happen? I don't think he's going to be up close enough to fight. And that's why I worry about his position in that team long term. And with Daniel Ricciardo waiting in the wings, I can see that swap happening. Not mid-season, but Checo needs to step it up. Thank you very much for giving me your time. Like, subscribe and notification bell. First pre-race chinwag is coming out on Thursday this week. I think it's a great idea to choose to follow the 2023 Formula 1 season with me. I think that could be fun. My name's Tommo. Thanks again. Have a good one. Ta-da.